The miracle doctor won't be a kept man. My heart belongs ashore. Chapter 881. It was his wife, Xander. "Wifey," Kiran York called out in his dream, hugging her tightly. He hadn't seen Xander in a few days and missed her dearly. He had grown accustomed to sleeping with her in his arms every night. In the dream, Xander didn't speak. Like a gentle woman, she took the initiative to kiss Kiran on the lips. They had already been intimate, so Kiran kissed her passionately without hesitation. The kiss ignited a flame, bringing them closer and closer together. Just as they were about to embrace their passionate moment, Sue Walton's voice suddenly echoed in Kiran's ear. "Kiran, she's not your wife." A sleeping Kiran jolted awake, his eyes snapping open. He realized he had been dreaming. His body's evident reaction showed how intense the dream had been. "What's going on?" Kiran asked in bewilderment. "I already told you. The only way to sever the path of the dragon veins being stolen is to sleep with Aoki Kosner," Sue Walton said sternly. "What does this have to do with Aoki Kosner?" Kiran asked, confused. "I can't explain it to you now. If you trust me, you'll sleep with Aoki Kosner," Sue replied, pausing for a moment before continuing. "Don't you know I want to be with you? Do you think I'd willingly give that opportunity to someone else?" Sue's questioning brought Kiran back to his senses. His expression turned contemplative as he thought deeply. "Aoki Kosner is the woman the heavens have sent to care for you. She truly loves you and can help you." "I can't do that." "Then be prepared to suffer." Sue's voice disappeared. Kiran grew more curious about Sue Walton, wondering what made her so knowledgeable. Unable to figure it out, Kiran lay down again, ready to sleep. As soon as he fell asleep, he dreamt of Xander again. In the dream, Kiran was no longer as clear-headed as when he was awake. He easily succumbed to Xander's affection. Just as they were about to cross the final boundary, Sue's voice woke him up again. Kiran woke up, realizing it was just a dream. "What's going on?" he snapped, but Sue didn't respond this time. He called out several times but received no answer and eventually gave up. He didn't dare sleep again, feeling like he was under a spell. He remembered how powerful his opponent was in remotely controlling Qigong and decided to meditate quietly to restore his energy. Every time he started to drift off, Xander would appear in his dreams. Luckily, he didn't fall deeply asleep and woke himself up each time. Thus, Kiran barely slept through the night. In the morning, he saw Lindsay Ludwig and Yvonne Quinn were already up. "Kiran, didn't you sleep well?" Lindsay asked gently, blinking. Kiran, feeling frustrated, couldn't explain the truth and lied. "I slept fine. Just that there were a lot of women in my dreams," Yvonne teased, sensing the truth through their connection. Lindsay imagined dirty scenarios upon hearing about the women and couldn't help but glance at Kiran, wanting to ask if he had such a wild taste. Kiran glared at Lindsay. "You should hurry up and renovate Justin Kruger's traditional medicine shop." Lindsay didn't press further in front of her sister and nodded, leaving the villa. Yvonne sat on the sofa, patted the seat next to her, and then her soft lap, saying to Kiran, "Come here and sleep for a while. I'll wake you if you start dreaming." Kiran, exhausted, hesitated for a moment before lying down on the sofa with his head on Yvonne's lap. Yvonne gently stroked Kiran's hair and said softly, "Sleep for a while. We can talk later." Kiran, overcome by fatigue, fell asleep quickly, but as soon as he did, Xander appeared in his dream again, making him feel crazy. He even hugged her tightly. "Stop dreaming," Yvonne called out to Kiran. Kiran woke with a start, finding himself in an awkward position. His hands were on Yvonne's sensitive areas, and his face was in an even more compromising position. Yvonne didn't seem to mind. She gently stroked Kiran's cheek and said, "The opponent used an illusion to trap you in her illusion." Sue Walton kept saying I should sleep with Aoki Kosner or I wouldn't be able to break free, Kiran admitted honestly. "Sue Walton's advice seems reasonable. You might consider it," Yvonne said. "How can I do that? Wouldn't that be betraying Xander?" Kiran said firmly. "You need to understand that this is just the beginning. If you drag this on, you'll lose all your vitality and energy. Then she will truly defeat you," Yvonne said, her eyes filled with concern. Kiran's expression grew serious. "I don't know who our opponent is, but her goal is to exhaust your vitality," Yvonne continued. "Her mental power is incredibly strong to control your mind so easily." Kiran clenched his fists. "It must be Lady Meiji. She can control Qigong's ghost fetus. I need to go to Sunland and kill that witch. You don't even know who she is. How will you kill her?" Yvonne asked, looking at Kiran. Kiran calmed down, realizing she was right. He didn't know who his opponent was. "If Sue Walton is telling you to sleep with Aoki Kosner, there must be a reason," Yvonne reminded. "You have only one chance to sleep with a woman. Sue Walton wishes it were her, but she still tells you to be with Aoki Kosner." It shows how dangerous your situation is. Yvonne's words made Kiran reflect. He stood up and paced the living room. Is Lady Meiji, who controls Qigang's spirit, really that powerful? I suspect they aim to seize the dragon vein, Yvonne said, looking at Kiran. You protect the dragon vein, and the dragon sword's awakening shows you can control them. The opponent wants to take all your power. Kiran clenched his fists again. They should be careful not to overeat to death. Chapter 882. Wow, my husband is getting so angry and frustrated, Yvonne Quinn said, hugging Kiran York's arm and smiling. Kiran, however, wasn't in a good mood. He turned to Yvonne and asked, Is there any way to resist this illusion? Currently, I don't know. Your mind is so strong, yet you still fell into this illusion. It shows how powerful the opponent is, Yvonne said, her eyebrows furrowing as she pondered. You must realize that the person who can invade your dreams from miles away possesses extremely strong mental control. Kiran's expression became serious and silent. He thought of Qigang's eyes, capable of delivering sharp attacks, highlighting an unimaginable level of mental control. I need to go to the Murphy family to get to the bottom of this, Kiran said, standing up to leave. Even though Byron Murphy is Lady Miles' disciple, I doubt his family knows about it, Yvonne said, looking at Kiran. I think what you need most now is to rest well. Once you've regained your mental strength, see if you can counter Lady Meiji's influence or kill her in the spirit realm. Kiran, who was about to leave, calmed down upon hearing Yvonne's advice. The more you exhaust your energy, the less likely you will be able to defeat her, Yvonne advised again. But as soon as I fall asleep, she appears. Even talking to me is consuming your energy. If you sleep in my arms, I can wake you up if she appears, allowing you to rest somewhat, Yvonne said, her beautiful eyes full of comfort. Kiran pondered for a moment, then nodded and lay back down on Yvonne's lap. Yvonne's legs were slender and cool due to her physique. It was summer, and while sleeping with the air conditioner on was usually hot, being on Yvonne's lap felt like sleeping on ice. Kiran, finding a comfortable position, hugged Yvonne's waist. Yvonne didn't object. Instead, she unzipped her coat, letting Kiran's head rest inside. Smelling Yvonne's fragrance, Kiran felt a ripple in his heart but suppressed his desires. Sleep now. I'll wake you if she appears, Yvonne said, genuinely concerned for Kiran without any teasing. Feeling secure, Kiran fell asleep with his face against Yvonne's abdomen, holding her waist. After the intense battle with Byron Murphy and killing Qigang, Kiran was exhausted and had not rested well. He was very tired. He quickly fell asleep, but as soon as he entered the dream, Snow Xander appeared again. Snow Xander was just as real as ever, but unlike his wife, she lacked sweetness and passion, possessing only a seductive body and the same face. Despite this, Kiran felt an irresistible temptation and naturally reached out to her. Just as he was about to proceed, Yvonne woke him up again. Kiran opened his eyes, feeling embarrassed when he saw the concern on Yvonne's face. Don't overthink it. Go back to sleep, Yvonne said gently, her white hands lightly stroking Kiran's face. At that moment, Kiran felt a warmth and security he hadn't felt before. Without Yvonne's empathy, he wouldn't have had any peace. Throughout the day, Kiran dozed off repeatedly, waking up each time Snow Xander appeared in his dreams, only to fall asleep again. By dinner time, when Lindsay Ludwig returned, Kiran had regained his energy. Seeing Kiran lying in Yvonne's lap, Lindsay felt a pang of jealousy and envy. Kiran sat up, about to speak. Quick, help me to the bathroom. I've been holding it in all day, Yvonne said, blushing. She had maintained that position all day to let Kiran rest without eating or drinking anything. Kiran suddenly remembered and quickly helped Yvonne up. Her legs were stiff. Feeling a mix of emotions and pity, Kiran massaged her legs to help the blood circulate. Lindsay, watching them, was curious and confused about what had happened between them. After escorting Yvonne to the bathroom, Kiran returned. Lindsay grabbed Kiran and pushed him into a corner. What are you up to? Kiran couldn't explain, so he said, Don't ask. It's a bit complicated. Do you like both of us sisters? Lindsay asked, misunderstanding Kiran's words. Kiran was speechless at her question. He adjusted her hair and said, It's not what you think. Then what is it? Lindsay pressed. Sis, you've got it wrong. Kiran was just resting in my lap, Yvonne said, coming out of the bathroom. Lindsay felt embarrassed and laughed awkwardly. Sis, order some takeout. We'll have a simple meal and let Kiran rest early, Yvonne suggested, noticing that Kiran seemed much better and hoping he could test his control in his dreams that night. Lindsay, though puzzled, complied. Kiran checked on Aoki Kosner's injuries, finding her recovery progressing well. As Kiran was about to leave, Aoki grabbed his hand. You shouldn't make an enemy of Lady Meiji. Kiran frowned and looked at Aoki. Aoki, determined, said, Lady Meiji is like a god in Sunland. She can fulfill many people's wishes. Blushing, Aoki continued, I once wanted to visit her to ask for help in making me fall in love with you. Kiran was stunned, stopping in his tracks. Have you met her? Aoki shook her head vigorously. It was just my wishful thinking, but I did give my birth date and time to her. How did you give it to her? Kiran saw a glimmer of hope. Mr. Fukada said he could do it, so I gave it to him, Aoki replied. Kiran remembered Fukada and regretted killing him. Thinking of Sue Walton's insistence on him being with Aoki, he wondered if there was a connection. Looking at Aoki with newfound hope, Kiran said, Give me your birth date and time. Chapter 883. Aoki Kosner's face blushed with nervousness when she heard Kiran York ask for her birth date and time. Hurry up and give it to me, Kiran urged. Seeing Kiran's urgency, Aoki quickly took out a piece of paper with her birth date and time and handed it to him. Kiran was surprised that Aoki carried her birth details written on paper. It seemed odd to him. When he saw her birth date and time, he was stunned. Aoki was 22 years old this year, born on February 22nd, at 22:22. All the numbers, coincidentally, were twos. Looking at this, Kiran was astonished. Although he wasn't an expert in birth date readings, he knew this one carried significant meaning. Seeing Kiran's astonishment, Aoki felt a bit embarrassed and explained, I also found it quite a coincidence to meet you this year. After a pause, she continued, I don't know why, but my birth date is just that coincidental. Kiran, holding the paper with her birth details, smiled and said, It means you have a lot of love to give. I'm not that kind of woman, Aoki blushed, quickly clarifying. Kiran couldn't help but laugh. Aoki's face was full of shyness as she continued, I have no experience. I've never been with a man before. Seeing her innocence, Kiran couldn't help but laugh again. He gently stroked her hair and said, I know. Do you really believe me? Aoki asked, her single-lidded eyes blinking with joy. Kiran nodded with a smile which seemed to ease Aoki's mind. Because women from Sunland were often portrayed in a certain light in movies, many men naturally thought of them in a particular way. Aoki was worried Kiran might see her that way, so she was eager to clarify. After chatting a bit more with Aoki, Kiran stepped out. Lindsay went to help Aoki with her meal, leaving Kiran and Yvonne to eat together. Do you think Aoki's birth date is special? Yvonne asked Kiran. Kiran nodded. Someone with such a birth date is bound to have an extraordinary fate. I'm also very curious about how such a birth date came to be, Yvonne muttered, then added, Tonight at 22:22 you should fall asleep. Kiran nodded, having already prepared for it. After finishing their meal and cleaning up, Kiran returned to his room. Yvonne stayed outside his door, ready to intervene if anything happened. Time passed slowly, and at 22, Kiran and Yvonne both grew increasingly tense. Kiran took a deep breath, meditated to calm himself, and lay down on the bed. As soon as he lay down, he fell asleep. Yvonne kept checking her phone. When the clock struck 22:22, she sensed Kiran's body tremble slightly inside the room. Yvonne's heart was in her throat, ready to rush in if needed. In his dream, Kiran tried to control his thoughts and stay aware. Suddenly, the familiar figure of Xander appeared in his vision, dressed in white, ethereal, beautiful, and enchanting. If she weren't an enemy in his dream, Kiran would have embraced her immediately. This was his beautiful wife, the woman he loved deeply. However, Kiran remained highly alert, knowing this was a critical moment. Sleep. Why struggle? Dreams Xander spoke sweetly, lacking the real Xander's haughty tone. Kiran felt her voice had a magical quality, weakening his willpower. He tried to focus and asked, Are you Lady Meiji? Aren't I Xander? The woman replied, slowly undressing as she approached Kiran. You're not Xander, Kiran insisted. I am Xander. Look at my face, my body. Shall we get on the bed and experience it together? She said, pouncing toward him. Kiran felt his mouth dry up, but he bit his tongue to stay awake. I won't sleep with someone like you. It's not about whether you want to or not. Even if you don't sleep with me today, there's always tomorrow, the day after. Over time, your mental strength will weaken, and you won't be able to resist, the woman said casually, as if getting Kiran was inevitable. Kiran struggled to control his desires. Despite his efforts, the woman continued to undress until she was completely naked, displaying a body as beautiful as Xander's. Facing this seductive woman, Kiran felt like ice slowly melting. The woman wasn't in a hurry. She kept moving around Kiran, occasionally touching his face, hair, and body. Kiran felt the softness of her hands, bringing an indescribable excitement and impulse. His heart raced as he struggled to control himself. As time passed, Kiran felt his willpower weakening, growing anxious. The woman remained calm, as if Kiran was already hers. After about 10 more minutes, Kiran felt his mental strength waning, almost about to fall into a deep sleep. His body was already asleep. Only his consciousness was struggling to stay awake. "All right, we can sleep now," the woman's voice, filled with enchantment, said as she leaned into Kiran's embrace. Kiran's hands instinctively wrapped around her. The woman started undressing Kiran. Suddenly, Yvonne kicked the door open. "Kiran, wake up!" Her voice was loud, but Kiran didn't wake up. Yvonne's mind buzzed with fear. Chapter 884. Slap, slap, slap! Yvonne Quinn raised her hand and slapped Kiran York's face hard, but he remained unresponsive, his body growing increasingly hot. His occasional movements resembled the frenzied motions of a man and woman in intimate contact. Yvonne could sense Kiran's psychological changes. His mental strength was on the brink of collapse, and he was about to give in. "What's going on?" Lindsay Ludwig rushed in and asked. Yvonne didn't have time to answer. She turned to Lindsay and said, "Quick, go get Aoki Kosner." "I'm here! I'm here!" Aoki's weak voice came from the doorway. Yvonne hurriedly pulled down Kiran's pants. Both Lindsay and Aoki, seeing Kiran's embarrassing state, quickly covered their eyes and screamed. Yvonne ignored the situation's awkwardness and pulled Aoki close, pleading, "Aoki, please, you need to help. If you don't, Kiran will die. Me." Aoki looked at Yvonne in disbelief. "Please, Aoki," Yvonne said, then quickly dragged her sister Lindsay out of the room and closed the door. Yvonne's body was trembling, clearly anxious and in pain. "What's happening?" Lindsay asked, full of confusion and worry. Realizing Kiran had only one chance to be with a woman, which was now given to Aoki, Lindsay felt a mix of anger and regret. "Aoki, if you don't sleep with Kiran, he will die," Yvonne said, pacing the hallway in distress. Understanding the bond between Yvonne and Kiran, Lindsay refrained from further comments, although she kept glancing toward the room, hoping everything would be all right. Inside, Aoki was still in a daze. Seeing Kiran's state, she hesitated but then steeled herself and went over to him. In the dream, Kiran's mental strength was collapsing. The woman was already sitting in his lap, about to take control. He felt powerless against her. The woman's face bore a playful smile as she whispered, "Little man, enjoy yourself. I'll give you endless pleasure." As she spoke, she drew closer to Kiran. Kiran's mental strength weakened further, and he was about to close his eyes, unable to resist any longer. In reality, Aoki had fully committed herself to Kiran, acting out of love and determination. She loved Kiran York. She finally got Kiran York. She was willing to do so without any regrets. In the dream, just as the woman was about to touch Kiran, she suddenly screamed in pain as if pierced by a sword. Kiran, on the brink of losing consciousness, suddenly woke up. He saw the woman's body turning black as if burned, glaring at him before fleeing. Kiran exhaled deeply and slowly opened his eyes. However, he was confronted with a scene that left him bewildered. Aoki's face showed a mix of complex emotions and pain, making Kiran feel deeply hurt. Aoki didn't expect Kiran to wake up suddenly. She quickly covered her face, sitting there, unsure of what to do. "Kiran, it was my idea. Otherwise you would have died," Yvonne shouted from the doorway, sensing Kiran's reaction. Kiran felt extremely conflicted and pained, but it was a done deal now. Thinking about how Aoki, despite her injuries, had come to save him, Kiran felt deeply moved. Finally, he transformed his gratitude into love for Aoki. 2 hours later, when Kiran emerged, he looked refreshed. Yvonne, who appeared exhausted as if she had been through a great battle, leaned against the wall. Lindsay supported her sister, looking at Kiran with a complex expression, regretting missing such an opportunity. Kiran walked over to Yvonne, picked her up and explained to Lindsay, "Yvonne is mentally exhausted and hasn't rested well." Lindsay nodded. Kiran carried Yvonne to her room, helped her relax with a massage, and she soon fell asleep. Kiran felt confused. He hadn't intended to be with Aoki, but she ended up saving him. Finally, he walked out alone and sat on the sofa. "Men are such fools. I told you to do it, you refused. Now you've done it, haven't you?" Sue Walton's mocking voice sounded in Kiran's ear. "Why didn't you help me?" Kiran asked angrily. "Why should I help you? What's our relationship exactly? Explain it to me," Sue retorted without any mercy. Kiran was left speechless. "There's no such thing as a free lunch. Why should anyone be good to you?" Sue's tone was full of resentment and reproach. "Why was Aoki the only one who could break the dream?" Kiran asked. "Because Lady Meiji is the embodiment of hatred, and Aoki's birth date and time make her the embodiment of love. The best way to resist hate is with love," Sue explained after a moment of silence. "You're fortunate to have Aoki fall in love with you, allowing her to play such a role at this moment. It's your good luck." You say Lady Meiji is the embodiment of hatred. Do you know her? Kiran asked eagerly. How would I know her? I only sensed it from your dream, Sue replied dismissively. Kiran didn't fully understand and asked again, so according to you, Lady Meiji wants to kill me? She doesn't necessarily want to kill you, she just wants something from you. What does she want? How would I know? I've never met her, Sue snapped, but then added, I suspect it's not the dragon vein or the dragon soul. She might want something else. What does she want then? Hate turns into love. I suspect she wants love, Sue said thoughtfully. That's insane. Why would she look for love from me? Kiran muttered in frustration. Maybe because you're so loving it attracted her. She wants to possess you, Sue replied. Are all you old women this complicated? Kiran thought about Lady Meiji as an old witch and Sue as a sorceress, asking bluntly. Kiran, you bastard! Who are you calling old? Sue shouted angrily. Aren't you already quite old? Aren't you an old woman? An old witch? Kiran asked seriously. Old your ass! I'm only 30 years old, Sue's voice turned vicious. Kiran was stunned. Was this what they call pretending to be young? Chapter 885. The next morning, Kiran York went to check on Aoki Kosner's injuries. Aoki was lying on Kiran's bed, feeling as if her body was falling apart. She was inexperienced, and it was indeed her first time. Kiran had been very gentle with her, but due to her previous injuries, her body naturally felt weak. Seeing Kiran, and thinking about their intimate moment last night, Aoki felt both happy and nervous. Kiran's face showed a hint of embarrassment. He hadn't expected to end up with Aoki. Holding her hand gently, he said, Thank you for saving me. Aoki shook her head, her beautiful eyes filled with charm and affection. I feel so happy. This is something I've dreamed of for a long time but never dared to hope for. Such simple words conveyed her deepest love. Kiran, deeply moved, gently embraced Aoki. Aoki took the opportunity to hold Kiran tightly, burying her head in his chest and quietly breathing in his masculine scent. I have a love spell on me. I probably can't share a bed with you in the future, Kiran said apologetically. Though Aoki felt a bit disappointed and sad, she smiled and said, I want you to be healthy, safe, and happy. My own feelings aren't as important. Kiran, moved by Aoki's genuine affection, hugged her tightly. As he did, he remembered a unique heart-shaped birthmark on her body. Aoki, knowing that Kiran didn't dislike her, felt overjoyed. After they held each other for a long time, Kiran finished treating her injuries and left the room. Aoki lay on Kiran's bed, inhaling his scent, her face glowing with happiness. She even hoped that last night's passion might result in her carrying Kiran's child. That would be enough for her. As Kiran went downstairs, he encountered Lindsay Ludwig. Lindsay clearly hadn't rested well. Her mature, graceful face looked tired, and her eyes were slightly swollen, as if she had cried. Are you okay? Do you need me to treat you? Kiran asked. Lindsay shook her head, looking forlorn. Even if you treat my surface wounds, what about the pain in my heart? Kiran was at a loss for words. Lindsay didn't want to make Kiran uncomfortable. She gently helped straighten his clothes, gave him a hug, and then left. Kiran was still puzzled by Lady Meiji's powerful mental control. After a brief preparation, he decided to visit the Murphy family. As he was leaving, Yvonne Quinn came out of her room. When you visit the Murphy family, try to take a long-term approach, she advised. Kiran looked at Yvonne, waiting for her to elaborate. I believe Lady Meiji wouldn't help the Murphy family without a reason, and it's unlikely she would do so much just for Byron Murphy. Kiran thought for a moment, nodding in agreement with Yvonne's analysis. I'll stay home to take care of Aoki Kosner. Call me if you need anything, Yvonne said, smiling reassuringly. Kiran left the villa and drove to the Murphy residence. When he arrived, he noticed some burning paper at the gate. Clearly, they were holding a funeral. Kiran walked straight into the villa courtyard. The Murphy family's bodyguards jumped out at the sight of him, but no one dared to make a move. Dale Murphy was arranging his grandfather's funeral. Seeing Kiran, he was furious. Kiran, you killed my grandfather. I will definitely get revenge. Kiran ignored Dale, scanning the courtyard. Surprisingly, he found that Dale was the only child in the Murphy family. There seemed to be no other children or grandchildren of Byron Murphy. Is your family dead? Kiran asked curiously. Dale, already furious, became even angrier. Pointing to his chest with his thumb, he said, I am the Murphy family. We still have people. If you're so great, kill me. Dale knew he was no match for Kiran, but he no longer feared death. With his grandfather gone and no one left to protect him from Kiran, he had nothing to lose. Kiran York ignored Dale Murphy and continued, Your parents are dead too? You. Dale Murphy gritted his teeth in anger. His entire body was trembling, and he could not speak. Kiran, remembering Yvonne's advice, ignored Dale's rage and turned to leave. "Kiran, just wait. I will spend all our family's wealth to hire someone to kill you," Dale shouted, trying to sound fierce and determined. Kiran paid him no mind and drove to Justin Kruger's traditional medicine clinic. Arriving at the clinic, he saw it was under renovation, bustling with activity. However, the materials and design looked excellent, and Kiran was pleased with Lindsay's arrangements. He walked into the courtyard. Wendy Kruger was reading a book in the yard. Seeing Kiran, she blushed and stood up to greet him. Kiran admired this scholarly woman. He had spent his childhood on a mountain with no other activities except martial arts and reading. As a well-read individual, Kiran noticed that many women he met had limited knowledge, including his wife, Xander, who read mainly professional books. In contrast, Wendy, despite not attending school, was well-versed in literature. "Carry on. I'm here to see your grandfather," Kiran said, nodding at Wendy. Wendy blushed deeper but called out, "Grandfather, Kiran is here." Justin Kruger hurried out, smiling at Kiran. "Dr. York, you seem anxious." Kiran shook his head. "I'm here to ask you something." Hearing this, Justin gestured to a stone bench and invited Kiran to sit. After Wendy brought some tea and left, Justin looked at her retreating figure, then glanced at Kiran, wishing the two could be together. "Does Byron Murphy only have one grandson, Dale? Doesn't he have any children?" Kiran asked directly. Justin's expression changed several times before he replied, "Byron Murphy has a son and a daughter." "Oh?" Kiran's curiosity was piqued. "I know his daughter went abroad, but I don't know where his son went," Justin said, frowning in thought. Kiran was surprised to learn that Byron had both a son and a daughter. "Do you think they will return now that he's dead?" "His daughter will definitely return, but I'm not sure about his son," Justin said, his expression darkening with a hint of resentment. "Could his son be in Sunland?" Kiran asked, eyeing Justin. Chapter 886. Justin Kruger's face darkened. Kiran York was curious, not understanding why Justin was getting angry. Justin took a couple of deep breaths and looked at Kiran, saying, "Byron Murphy's son is named Liam Murphy. Liam and my son are the same age." Kiran was quite surprised but didn't speak. He just watched Justin, waiting for him to continue. After calming down a bit, Justin went on, "That bastard Liam, he once tried to take Nell Donner away." Hearing this, Kiran was stunned. Shouldn't Justin be happy if Liam took Nell away? Justin explained, "If Nell hadn't been with my son at the time, I would have been happy if Liam took her away. But they were together then, and Liam still tried to take her. It was a clear attempt to humiliate our family." Kiran nodded, understanding Justin's anger. Justin continued after a moment of contemplation, "I went to see Byron about it. Byron was furious when he found out and beat Liam up." Kiran was surprised. "What happened next?" "Liam left Dragon's Land in a fit of anger, saying he was going to Sunland. He disappeared after that." Justin calmed his emotions before continuing. "Before he left, Liam came to our house, bragging that he would bring back a woman from Sunland who was more beautiful than Nell." Kiran almost laughed, finding the situation amusing. "He left for Sunland and has been missing ever since. After my son passed away, I had no contact with the Murphy family and lost track of Liam," Justin explained. Kiran nodded, indicating his understanding. "Why did you suddenly bring this up?" Justin asked curiously. "I was investigating the relationship between Byron Murphy and Lady Meiji today. I saw a funeral at the Murphys' house. Apart from Dale Murphy, who is useless, there were only bodyguards and family members, which made me curious. Dale wouldn't know." "He's not Byron's biological grandson." Justin shook his head. "Dale isn't a Murphy?" Kiran asked, surprised. "He's a Murphy, just a distant relative," Justin explained. Kiran's expression turned serious. "So, the Murphy family has no direct descendants?" "I don't know about that," Justin replied, thinking for a moment. "The Murphy family is strange. Their birthmarks seem to be hereditary." "Hereditary birthmarks?" Kiran asked curiously. Justin nodded. "Byron has a heart-shaped birthmark on his right buttock, and so does his son." "A heart-shaped birthmark on the right buttock?" Kiran's eyes widened as he looked at Justin for confirmation. Justin nodded mechanically. "Yes, is there a problem?" "Are you sure?" Kiran's voice rose. Justin nodded firmly, indicating his certainty. The more certain Justin was, the more chaotic Kiran's thoughts became. He remembered that Aoki Kosner had a heart-shaped birthmark on her right buttock, a unique and unforgettable mark. Justin's words made Kiran's world feel like it was collapsing. Could Aoki Kosner be a member of the Murphy family? "My master mentioned that the Murphy family's birthmark might be hereditary," Justin continued without much thought. Kiran couldn't stay any longer. He stood up abruptly, looking at Justin. "I have something to do. I need to go." Justin found it strange, but didn't stop him. Kiran left Justin's clinic and drove straight back to the villa. When he arrived, he saw Aoki Kosner with Yvonne Quinn, fresh out of the shower. Aoki had been injured and got sweaty and dirty while spending the night with Kiran. She needed Yvonne's help to bathe. Both women were surprised to see Kiran return so suddenly. Kiran's eyes naturally fell on Aoki's heart-shaped birthmark. Whether it was Justin's words or Kiran's own thoughts, the birthmark seemed to mock him. "Didn't you get enough of a look last night?" Yvonne glared at Kiran. Aoki was too embarrassed to know what to do. She tried to cover herself but realized there was no point since Kiran had already seen everything. "It's good you're here. You take over," Yvonne said, letting go of Aoki and going to dress. Aoki stood there awkwardly. Kiran walked over, supporting her gently. "Let's go upstairs." Feeling Kiran's strength and warmth, Aoki nodded and followed him upstairs. In the room, Kiran noticed the sheets had been changed. Aoki's face turned red, remembering the significance of the moment. After helping her lie down and covering her with a blanket, Kiran sat beside her and asked, "That heart-shaped birthmark on your right buttock, is it a tattoo?" Even though the question seemed crude, Kiran had to start somewhere. Aoki blushed deeply, recalling the position she was in the previous night. "It's a natural birthmark." Kiran's mind raced with thoughts of heredity. "Do your parents have similar birthmarks?" Aoki shook her head. "I've been an orphan since I was a child. I don't know who my parents are, but my adoptive parents raised me." Kiran was stunned. "Your adoptive parents didn't tell you where they found you?" "They found me at the foot of Saintess Mountain in Sunland," Aoki explained. "Saintess Mountain in Sunland?" Kiran asked. Aoki nodded. "There's a legend that Lady Meiji lived on that mountain, but no one knows the exact location, and the mountain is impossible to climb." Hearing about Lady Meiji living on Saintess Mountain, Kiran's face lit up with excitement. Realizing she might have said too much, Aoki quickly covered her mouth. "I was just talking nonsense. Chapter 887. Are you hiding something from MME? Kiran York's voice turned cold as he stared at Aoki Kosner. Aoki became nervous and shook her head frantically. "No, absolutely not. I would never lie to you. Whatever you want to know, I can tell you." "Didn't you say you didn't know where Lady Meiji was? Why did you then say she was on Saintess Mountain?" Kiran's sharp gaze remained on Aoki, preventing her from lying. Aoki was so anxious that tears were about to fall. Kiran showed no mercy, continuing to watch Aoki, waiting for her to speak. Finally, Aoki looked at Kiran helplessly. "I heard it from someone. I'm not sure." "Who told you?" Kiran pressed on. "My adoptive mother," Aoki replied. "How did she know?" Kiran asked. Aoki shook her head, indicating she didn't know. Kiran stared at her. "Once you're healed, you'll accompany me to Sunland to find your adoptive mother." "You want to find Lady Meiji?" Aoki asked. Kiran didn't lie and nodded. Aoki's expression changed several times before she finally nodded. "All right, once I'm healed, I'll take you. Take good care of yourself and get better soon." Kiran gently touched Aoki's face with anticipation. Aoki took the opportunity to open her arms, hugging Kiran and burying her head in his chest. Kiran didn't refuse and held Aoki for a while. After they released each other, Kiran went downstairs. Yvonne Quinn was already dressed and sitting on the sofa. Seeing Kiran, she said, "Take me out for a drive, I feel a bit stuffy." Kiran, feeling guilty for sleeping with Aoki, nodded in agreement. They left the villa and drove away. Upstairs, Aoki, biting her lip and with tears in her eyes, began to get dressed and pack her things. She quickly left the villa and hurriedly bought a ticket back to Sunland. Kiran had no idea that this was the last time he would see Aoki. After driving around with Yvonne for 2 hours, Kiran returned home. He went upstairs to find Aoki but found her room empty and neatly tidied up. Kiran was stunned and quickly opened the bathroom door, finding it empty. "Aoki Kosner?" Kiran called out loudly in the villa. There was no response. Kiran's face darkened. Yvonne looked at Kiran. "Aoki's not here?" Kiran didn't respond and pulled out his phone to call Aoki, but her phone was turned off. Panic set in. Kiran immediately called Lindsay Ludwig, asking her to find Aoki's location. Half an hour later, Lindsay called back. "Aoki is at Dragon City Airport." Kiran didn't waste any time and drove to the airport to find Aoki. Yvonne didn't follow. She had guessed that Aoki would leave and had taken Kiran out to give Aoki time to depart. Aoki loved Kiran and couldn't let him go to Sunland to die. Finding Lady Meiji was out of the question. The best way was for Aoki to leave without saying goodbye, making it impossible for Kiran to find her. Kiran, worried about Aoki, drove furiously to the airport, his eyes burning with anger. The thought of Aoki leaving without saying goodbye made him want to tie her up and give her a good beating. When Kiran arrived at the airport, he found that Aoki's flight had already taken off. Furious, Kiran stomped his feet and tried to buy a ticket to Sunland but realized he didn't have his visa or any documents. Enraged, he stormed towards the parking lot. When he reached the lot, he found his car had been overturned. Already in a foul mood, Kiran was even angrier. He looked around and shouted, "Who flipped my car?" Just then, a loud crash echoed as his car was hit again. Kiran looked up to see a white Range Rover with an angry woman inside. The woman's face was filled with anger. Kiran, also angry, walked to the woman's car and forcefully opened the door. "Why did you flip my car?" "Your car was blocking the way, so I flipped it," the woman sneered. "A handsome guy like you shouldn't be so inconsiderate." Kiran's face turned red with embarrassment. He had left the car in a hurry to find Aoki. However, the woman's arrogance annoyed him. "Why didn't you call?" "I did. I knew it was Lindsay Ludwig's car, so I flipped it," the woman said disdainfully. Kiran was even more baffled by the woman's arrogance. He studied her. She looked to be in her 42nds, attractive and exuding mature charm. However, her cold and arrogant demeanor was off-putting. "Do you know Lindsay Ludwig?" Kiran asked, trying to control his anger. "Why would I know her? Even her father would have to be respectful to me," the woman said with obvious contempt for Finn Ludwig. Kiran was curious. This woman was excessively arrogant. "Who are you?" "My name is Aaron Murphy," the woman said disdainfully. Kiran suddenly remembered Byron Murphy's son was named Liam. "Could this be his daughter?" "Are you Byron Murphy's daughter?" Kiran asked. Liam was surprised Kiran knew her identity. "Who are you? How do you know?" "My name is Kiran York." Hearing Kiran's name, Aaron cursed, "Damn, you're Kiran York." She jumped out of the car, her expression furious. Standing over 1.7 meters tall and wearing black high heels, she looked elegant and mature. However, there was no warmth in her expression. She swung her fist at Kiran's head. Kiran didn't expect such aggression. Her martial arts skills weren't bad. He stepped back, dodging her punch. "Byron Murphy isn't my match, and neither are you," Kiran warned. Aaron's face darkened further. "Even if I die, I'll avenge my father." With that, she pulled out a dagger and lunged at Kiran's chest. Chapter 888. Aaron Murphy's martial arts skills weren't high, but her determination to kill Kiran York was strong. She didn't care about her own life or death, focusing only on stabbing Kiran to death. Kiran, remembering Yvonne Quinn's advice to use a long-term strategy against the Murphy family, didn't want to hurt Aaron. He simply reached out and grabbed her wrist gently. The moment Kiran acted, Aaron realized she was no match for him. She grew even more furious. "You have the guts to kill me." Kiran ignored her, took the dagger away, and turned to leave. When Aaron's hand was released, it felt as if it had been clamped by a tiger's jaws, aching and numb. She shook her wrist vigorously, wanting to continue attacking Kiran, but saw he had already gotten into his car. Aaron shouted at Kiran's car, "I swear I'm going to run you over today." She hurriedly got into her Range Rover, started it, and drove straight towards Kiran's car. Kiran tried to start his car but failed several times. Just as Aaron's car was about to hit his, Kiran's car finally roared to life and sped away. Not hitting Kiran's car made Aaron even angrier. She floored the gas pedal and continued the chase. Kiran didn't want to deal with this madwoman. He drove back to the villa as fast as he could. He was eager to get his passport and head to Sunland to find Aoki Kosner. Aaron, unaware of Kiran's urgency to find Aoki, thought he was trying to escape and pursued him madly. Thus, a scene unfolded on the road with a Range Rover chasing a Lamborghini. Kiran's Lamborghini was already battered from the collisions. Seeing this wild chase, other vehicles quickly moved aside, afraid of getting involved. Kiran drove straight back to the villa. Aaron followed him to the villa's gate, but the security didn't let her in, so she drove away reluctantly. However, she was determined to fight to the death with Kiran and avenge her father. Kiran returned to the villa, where Yvonne Quinn was waiting on the sofa. "I don't agree with you going to Sunland," Yvonne said directly, stopping him. "I want to find Aoki Kosner and have her take me to Lady Meiji," Kiran explained his plan. Yvonne shook her head even more firmly. "If that's the case, I definitely won't agree to you going to Sunland." "It's my freedom," Kiran insisted. "Don't forget, your life isn't just yours. There's me, Lillian Yanez, and your wife, Snow Xander," Yvonne said, frowning and staring at Kiran. Kiran fell silent. "If you insist on going, I'll call Snow Xander right now and have her stop you," Yvonne said, reaching for her phone. "I'll call her myself," Kiran said, sitting down. "Calm down for a moment." "What if Snow Xander is pregnant?" Yvonne asked seriously. Kiran was stunned, not having considered that possibility. Yvonne continued, "Blake Frost's example is already a painful lesson. What if you become the next Blake Frost?" I'd rather die in battle than hide here, Kiran said, more determined than ever, provoked by Yvonne's words. You may not fear death, but have you considered a critical issue? Yvonne asked. What issue? Lady Meiji is definitely more powerful than the Ninja Association. Last time, you barely survived challenging the Ninja Association alone. Do you think challenging Lady Meiji isn't suicide? Yvonne pointed out Kiran's lack of martial arts skills. Kiran's expression darkened, deeply hurt by Yvonne's words, but he couldn't deny the truth in them. Lady Meiji could use mental control to manipulate Chi-Gang to attack and had almost killed him several times in his dreams. Her abilities were far superior to those of the ninjas. Although Sue Walton said that Aoki Kosner could prevent Lady Meiji from harassing you in dreams, who knows if that's true? You should focus on improving your abilities and find an opportunity to kill her, Yvonne advised. Kiran fell into deep thought, not responding immediately. Yvonne walked over, cupping Kiran's face with her hands and speaking tenderly. Don't think about others right now. Xander, Lillian Yanes, Aoki Kosner, and I are all closely connected to you. If something happens to you, what will we do? Even if we're not afraid of death, don't we want to live well and be with you? You're carrying not only family grudges, but also the responsibility of protecting the Dragon Vein. The enemies behind Power Hub Investment Group haven't surfaced yet, and you're eager to fight Lady Meiji. Is it worth it? Kiran calmed down completely. His biggest enemy now was the force behind Power Hub Investment Group. As for his grudge with the Imperial Dragon, he was gradually letting it go. He would seek an explanation from them, but wouldn't go on a killing spree. I understand. I won't go to Sunland for now, Kiran finally said. That's great, Yvonne exclaimed, hugging Kiran, tears of relief streaming down her face. She had been under immense pressure. Kiran felt Yvonne's concern and was internally conflicted. For these women he bore a heavy burden. In his heart he only wanted to love Xander properly. Did you go to the Murphy family today? Yvonne asked, letting go of Kiran. Yes, I did, Kiran began, knowing Yvonne could sense his thoughts. He recounted the day's events involving the Murphy family. I think now that Aaron Murphy is back, you should go to the Murphy family and investigate, Yvonne suggested. How should I investigate? Kiran was troubled, thinking about Aaron's unreasonable behavior and the need for a long-term strategy. That woman, according to you, is like a mad dog. Such women are easy to deal with, Yvonne said with a mischievous smile. Kiran didn't understand, looking at Yvonne questioningly. If she gets more arrogant, just grab her and have someone sleep with her. Is that okay? Kiran was curious about Yvonne's suggestion. Why not? Don't you have Joshua Carter? Let Joshua sleep with her. Kiran almost spat out blood. Yvonne was truly a mischievous woman. Aaron Murphy could be Joshua's mother. However, Kiran's eyes lit up, thinking this might be a good idea. What if Aaron got scared and gave in? He excitedly said, Let's go now. Yvonne laughed and nodded. If that doesn't work, you can sleep with her yourself. Kiran rolled his eyes and walked away. Yvonne giggled, following behind him. Chapter 889. Murphy residence. Aaron Murphy, dressed in mourning clothes, knelt in front of her father's coffin, crying bitterly. She felt even more grief and guilt for failing to kill Kiran York. Dale Murphy stood nearby, also crying. He tried to help his aunt up. Aaron, however, pushed Dale away and cried out, I must kill Kiran York to avenge you. Then come and kill me now. Yvonne Quinn's mocking voice came from behind Aaron. Aaron was taken aback and turned to see Yvonne walk in, holding Kiran's arm. Kiran. Aaron and Dale shouted through gritted teeth. Kiran calmly looked at Aaron and asked, Your father died, and you still haven't called your brother Liam? Hearing this question, Aaron, like a cat whose tail was stepped on, completely lost her temper. I'll kill you, she shouted. At that moment, Aaron, like a fierce man, reached for her waist and pulled out a gun. Kiran was curious about her identity. Who was this woman who carried both a knife and a gun? Bang, bang, bang. Aaron didn't waste any words and fired 3 shots at Kiran. Kiran quickly pulled Yvonne to dodge. Clang, clang, clang! The bullets hit the ground, ricocheting everywhere. Seeing that she missed Kiran, Aaron became even angrier and prepared to fire again. If you anger Kiran, you'll regret it, Yvonne coldly warned Aaron. Mind your own business! Aaron snarled and fired at Kiran again. This time, Kiran was closer to Aaron and the coffin. Although he dodged the bullets, they struck the coffin, creating 3 holes. Seeing her father's coffin damaged, Aaron felt her father couldn't rest in peace and grew even angrier. Kiran, however, noticed a foul smell. He sniffed and confirmed the stench was coming from the coffin. He quickly walked over. Get away! Aaron yelled, enraged, firing 2 more shots. Bang, bang. The bullets hit the coffin again, breaking it further. The entire hall filled with the stench, causing some people to cover their noses. Kiran reached the coffin and forcefully opened the lid, releasing an overwhelming stench. Erin, who had been rushing over, now covered her nose, feeling nauseous. Kiran looked inside and was shocked to see Byron Murphy's body already decaying, almost turning into a skeleton. Kiran was puzzled. Byron had only died yesterday. Even if decay set in quickly, it shouldn't happen this fast. It defied logic. Suppressing his urge to vomit, Kiran examined Byron's corpse. He noticed 2 red kiss marks on Byron's face. Kiran was stunned. Byron wasn't kissed before he died. So where did these marks come from? And why were they still visible while the skin was decaying? Yvonne also came over and noticed the same thing. Meanwhile, Erin, having adjusted to the smell, reloaded her gun and aimed at Kiran. "Today I will kill you," she declared. As she spoke, she pulled the trigger again. This time, Kiran was quicker. He pulled Yvonne with him, and they quickly approached Erin. Kiran grabbed Erin's hand as she pulled the trigger. "Ouch!" Erin cried out in pain. "Crash!" Kiran easily took the gun from her. "Take her away," Yvonne whispered in Kiran's ear. Kiran grabbed Erin's arm and began to drag her outside. "Let go of me. If you have the guts, kill me," Erin shouted angrily as she struggled. "Let go of my aunt," Dale shouted at Kiran, rushing over. Kiran turned and glared at Dale, who recoiled in fear and didn't dare to approach. Kiran dragged Erin out of the Murphy villa and threw her into the back seat of the car. Erin, her acupoint sealed, was now powerless. She glared at Kiran with eyes full of fire. She couldn't speak due to her sealed acupoints and was forced to swallow her insults in anger, making her even more furious. Kiran drove towards Kiran Mountain. Half an hour later, they arrived at the base of Kiran Mountain. Although the Murphy family still owned Kiran Mountain, they had abandoned it, leaving it desolate and empty. Now the mountain was filled with the sounds of birds and beasts with no human activity. Kiran parked the car, walked to the back seat and pulled Erin out. Without saying a word, he led Erin and Yvonne toward the grand hall. Inside the hall, Erin was shocked by the mess and stench. Kiran unsealed Erin's acupoints and said, "I want to know 2 things. "Spit." Erin spat at Kiran and angrily cursed, "I won't tell you anything. Kill me if you have the guts." She didn't attack, knowing her martial arts and gun skills were no match for Kiran. Kiran ignored her and continued, "First, where is your brother Liam Murphy?" "I won't tell you," Erin retorted. Kiran wasn't angry and asked, "What was your father Byron Murphy's relationship with Lady Meiji?" As he spoke, Kiran watched Erin's eyes closely. When he mentioned Lady Meiji, Erin's eyes flickered twice, clearly surprised. "I won't tell you anything. Kill me if you dare," Erin said through gritted teeth. "Killing you would be as easy as squashing a grasshopper?" Kiran sneered. "Then do it." "I'm not afraid to die," Erin shouted. "You want to die? I won't grant your wish. But I can make you wish you were dead," Kiran said coldly. "You think you can sleep with me?" "Go ahead," Erin mocked, seemingly inviting Kiran to try. "I'm not interested in you, but I can find someone to sleep with you," Kiran smirked. "Are you going to become a beast, Kiran?" Erin was now genuinely afraid. Kiran didn't respond. He dialed Joshua Carter's number and put the call on speaker. Joshua answered quickly and Kiran said, "Come to the Grand Hall at Kiran Mountain and sleep with a woman." Joshua was stunned, not understanding what was happening. "You can use any methods you need," Kiran added, then hung up, smirking at Erin. Erin was now thoroughly terrified. Chapter 890. "You bastard, Kiran York! You're a pervert!" Erin Murphy cursed at Kiran out of fear and terror. Kiran remained calm, simply waving his phone as if to remind Erin to expect a good show. Erin was truly scared now. Her mature, charming face showed a trace of inexplicable tension. Yvonne Quinn, standing nearby, smiled and said, "Don't worry, the one sleeping with you is a young and handsome gentleman. You won't be at a loss." "Damn you! Do you think you can sleep with me as you please?" Erin roared at Kiran and Yvonne. "If you don't want to sleep with him, then answer my 2 questions," Kiran said, smiling faintly as he stared at Erin. Erin seemed to be in a dilemma, anxious and furious. Her face turned pale, and her hands clenched into fists, with her smooth nails digging into her palms. However, she still didn't give in, angrily glaring at Kiran without speaking. "It seems you really want to be an old cow eating tender grass today," Kiran sneered, then looked towards the entrance of the Grand Hall, waiting for Joshua Carter to arrive. Half an hour later, Joshua hurried into the hall. He didn't know what Kiran wanted from him, but he obediently brought a lot of items from an adult store. Kiran glanced at them and couldn't help but wipe his nose, feeling a bit embarrassed. Yvonne, however, was quite open about it. She smiled at Erin and said, Have you made up your mind? Kiran, you are all perverts. You can curse all you want, but this is the situation, Yvonne said, standing up for Kiran. Aaron was genuinely frightened now. Joshua looked at Kiran and asked, Young Master York, what are your instructions? Sleep with her, Kiran said, pointing at Aaron. She's Byron Murphy's daughter. She's a bit older, but don't mind that. Joshua was confused, but hearing she was Byron Murphy's daughter made him feel a sense of revenge. After all, they were from prominent families, and Dale Murphy had often looked down on him. Even though he was a grandson in the Carter family, he wasn't favored by Elder Carter, while Dale was the future heir of the Murphy family. Dale had always mocked and belittled him. Now, hearing he could sleep with Byron's daughter, Dale's aunt, he felt a sense of satisfaction. He even thought the items he bought from the adult store weren't enough and should have brought more. Erin's face turned as white as a sheet. She wasn't afraid of death or Kiran's prowess, but she truly feared Kiran's shameless behavior. If this got out, where would she hide her face? Seeing Erin still not giving in, Kiran told Joshua, I'll immobilize her. You take off her pants. Joshua's eyes fell on Erin's Sultra short denim shorts. He thought Erin, at around 40, looked more like a young widow than an older woman. Thinking this, he was filled with anticipation and excitement. Erin turned to run, but suddenly felt a numbness, like being pricked by a silver needle. She turned to see Kiran holding another silver needle, waving it as a warning. Erin's heart sank, her face filled with terror. Go take her pants off, Yvonne ordered Joshua again. Joshua obediently walked towards Erin. Erin, now completely terrified, shouted at Kiran, Liam Murphy died long ago. Kiran's face changed, signaling Joshua to stop. How did Liam Murphy die? Where? Kiran asked, staring at Erin. Out of fear, Erin didn't dare lie and answered honestly. He died over 20 years ago. Over 20 years ago? Kiran asked for confirmation. It's been 23 years, Erin said, her face showing a hint of remembrance. Kiran's mind buzzed. Liam had died 23 years ago and Aoki Kosner was 22. Recalling Justin Kruger's words about the hereditary birthmark in the Murphy family, he instinctively looked at Erin's right side. Erin, thinking Kiran had some ideas, looked nervous and flustered. Do you have a heart-shaped birthmark on your right buttock? Kiran asked directly. What? Erin screamed in shock, instinctively looking towards her buttocks, thinking she was exposed. I heard that members of the Murphy family have a heart-shaped birthmark on the right side of their buttocks, Kiran said to Erin. Erin's face changed several times. Afraid of being stripped, she shamefully said, Yes, I have a heart-shaped birthmark on my right buttock. Kiran's head spun. He was increasingly convinced that Aoki Kosner was related to the Murphy family. Where did your brother Liam Murphy die 23 years ago? Kiran asked urgently. Erin replied, He died at the foot of St. S Mountain in Sunland. Kiran's mind buzzed again. Her adoptive parents found Aoki Kosner at the foot of that mountain. Kiran quickly calmed down and asked, How did he die? The police concluded that he accidentally fell off a cliff, Erin answered. He was alone at the time, right? Erin didn't understand Kiran's question, but nodded honestly. Yes, my father said he was alone. Kiran thought about Lady Meiji being at St. S Mountain, Liam dying there, and Byron Murphy being Lady Meiji's disciple. He felt there was something fishy. Do you know why your father learned martial arts in Sunland? Kiran pretended to be unaware. Hearing this question, Erin became cautious and asked, Are you trying to inquire about Lady Meiji? You know something about Lady Meiji? Kiran asked eagerly. Lady Meiji is our family's benefactor. Of course we know her and everyone is grateful to her, Erin said, her eyes showing respect and admiration when talking about Lady Meiji. Kiran frowned and said, What do you know about Lady Meiji? Tell me quickly. I only know that Lady Meiji will avenge anyone who dares to harm our family and will die a terrible death, Erin said, glaring at Kiran as if to say he would suffer the same fate. Kiran ignored the threat and said, I suspect Lady Meiji is the one harming your family. You're lying, Erin shouted angrily. Someone sucked away your father's last bit of yang energy before he died, Kiran said seriously. Erin's face turned pale with fear and unease.